Hello, Fanshawe, and welcome to EDI Talks, a series of informal discussions aimed at raising awareness about equity-deserving topics in a safe, open space. This is part of our commitment towards removing systemic barriers on campus. EDI Talks features a different subject each month and is hosted by myself, Troy Townsend, she, her. I am the anti-racism and inclusion specialist. So here we are today in the Golly-Way Circle in the Library Learning Commons. Golly-Way is an Oneida word meaning good message, and we're hoping to bring good messages in this space. March is Women's History Month, and March 8th is International Women's Day. This morning, I've invited Natalie Fletcher to have a quick conversation with me. And Natalie, before we get into any conversation, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at Fanshawe?
Bonjour, Natalie Indisna-Cause, Caldwell Indunjaba. My name's Natalie Fletcher. I'm a member of Caldwell First Nation, and I am the manager of Indigenous Student Success here at Fanshawe. I've been here for about almost 4 years. And previous to that, I worked in First Nation community in a tribal council as a post-secondary counselor. So I've been in education for a number of years.
Good for you. Thank you for sharing that, and welcome.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, March 8th is now recognized worldwide as International Women's Day. So why do you think it's important to host a separate date just to acknowledge women?
Well, I think it's really important. I always say, why wouldn't we celebrate women, right?
Good answer.
But yeah, I think, it's important because we've had a long struggle, right? Women have had a long road of just trying to be equal in the world. We didn't always have the right to vote. There were certain jobs we were never allowed to work in. And so it's important to recognize those trailblazers that made this all possible for us. But I think also acknowledge that even in the world, there's still issues of women not having access to things like education and the jobs that most of us take for granted that we're now working in, right? So I think it's really important to acknowledge that. Acknowledge women everywhere, even the ones that, just sit quietly back and do great things in the world but never ask for any kind of recognition, right? So I notice those ones. So it's so important to acknowledge women and have this day especially to celebrate being a woman and to celebrate just the awesomeness of women in general.
That's right. One thing that you just said that I was thinking of where inequity still exists is with women's health care. There's still some women that don't even have access to the healthcare products that they need.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we still have a long way to go. We've come a long way, but still a long way to go.
Exactly.
The theme for International Women's Day for 2023 is Embrace Equity. So speaking from your own experiences, what equitable advances have you witnessed in the workplace during your career path, or advances that you think should have happened but haven't yet?
So I started in education 30 years ago. I was thinking about that this morning. I went, oh my goodness, 30 years ago that I started working in education. And at that time, most of the people in administration were men. All the principals I worked with, vice principal, all male. There's a lot of female teachers who are really good role models for me. But in the past 30 years, I have seen a shift in that. So there's a whole lot of women working in these administration roles, in roles as vice principals, administration, superintendents. I think that's amazing, right? And they also have been mentors to me. One of them actually I used to work with is the one that told me to get up and go to teachers college. So I was very thankful to have her in my life and to sort of push me in a direction that I knew I wanted to go but was hesitant to go. So that is the big change I've seen is a lot of representation of female in leadership roles and admin roles, which is very exciting, right? Because you feel comfortable coming into a place where you see women sitting on these committees with you, so you're you don't feel alone, right? But I also I think that we need to see more Black, Indigenous, and people of color being represented in these roles, and that we have some work to do. So I think just talking about that, we really need to look at our hiring practices to just allow, level the playing field,
right.
So that there's more thought put into lived experience. I mean, education, sure, is very important, but that experience is also equally important, right? So I think we need to look at how we find the right fit around the college, but in general, everywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're absolutely right that representation does matter and it's important. And now that Fanshawe is recognized as a 50-30 hub, and we are going to be promoting that 50% equitable number of women in leadership roles. So hopefully we're going to be making some changes in the community.
Amazing.
Moving on, very similar question. What types of barriers have you faced being a woman in a leadership role, or challenges that you've overcome?
Yeah, again, I will say I've been fortunate to have a lot of female leaders. One of the first people that ever hired me was male, and he was so wonderful. Like, he was so helpful to me. So I struggle a little bit with this question just because I feel like I've been very fortunate and had a lot of help on the way, and had a lot of supportive men and female help me get to where I am. But you know, sometimes, a couple times in the roles I've been in, you know, I've been told, you're too kind, and people are going to take that as weakness. So you need to toughen up. So that's one of those barriers, I would say, that my own personal traits have sometimes made me feel less than. And it took me a little bit to be able to accept that I am a kind person and I will always be a kind person. It doesn't mean I'm weak. So that was one thing that I struggled with a little bit, hearing that come from someone. And also I've heard this often as a barrier as a mother as well, right? Having to balance work and life and sometimes take that time off to be with my kids who are sick. And so I've been fortunate that a lot of the leaders that I have worked with totally understand that, and they're accepting of it. They allow the time. They don't judge to do those sorts of things, because family is first.
Yes.
It doesn't matter like what my job is or what my job will be. My family will always come first, and we really need people to be able to accept that a lot of the times, right? And be like, it's okay. Today you get to be a mom. You're always a mom, but it's okay if you miss work or you don't get this done. So I think that's important. And I've been told I'm overly sensitive. So I can be very emotional. I cry. And so that has sometimes been seen as the weakness that they talk about. But Liz Akawenzi, who is our knowledge keeper, has told me to cry, that it's okay to cry, accept it. It is a normal part of being a human being. Crying, let it out, it's not a weakness. So if you ever see me crying, it's because I have permission to cry.
Very good. And it's almost like a cleansing ritual, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I find it was tough trying to always hide that and not cry when I needed to cry. I mean, I'm not always just sobbing away, but I think sometimes getting your point across takes those tears, right? And maybe I'm overly sensitive, but I'm also perceptive, right? And so I think that comes with being perceptive, is that those emotional responses.
Right.
Yeah.
So I see you as an empath. Is that true?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that with us, because that would be a challenge in a leadership role when you're empathic. So you carry a lot of weight.
Yes. You have
Yes,
to,
you
yeah.
do.
They want you to have that backbone, but it doesn't mean I can't do the job, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for young women who are trying to forge their own career path in academia?
Yeah, it can be a really tough journey for sure. There's that balancing that needs to happen between like work and life and your own self-care. But there's two things that I would say, and these are things that when thinking about my own experience, surround yourself with people who will mention your name in a room full of opportunity. So make sure whoever you're with has your back, but also have their back. And this goes along with the second thought I have is, if you're doing the same thing as another woman, they're not your competition. She's actually your sister, so support her, hold her up, be there for her. and they'll be there for you as well. So I think those are really important things. We do live in a competitive world where everyone wants to get ahead and do the best that they can do, but do it with good intent to always be there for other women and hold them up. It can be a really tough world to live and thrive in if you don't have that support from other women.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So we need to be there more for each other. And I love that concept of sisterhood as a collective.
Yeah.
So final thought then. Who inspires you? Name a woman that inspires you.
My mother.
Oh,
I will say
great
that
answer.
all the time. She is someone who taught me to be kind. Like, she has shown genuine kindness to a world that has not always been kind to her. So Indigenous women have not always been treated well by the government, by the systems that were there to oppress them. But my mother is amazing. She is always happy, always smiling. She lets everyone into their house. She feeds everybody. And she did teach me to just let go of the things that you can't control, and you'll sleep really well at night. And it's true. When I go to bed, I put my head on the pillow, I'm out. I have learned that from my mom, to just let go of the day and everything that has caused you stress or,
Right.
yeah.
I wish I could do that, but I can't. But great advice, and good for your mom to give
Yeah.
that to you.
She's amazing.
Perfect. And on that final thought, we're going to close. So thank you very much,
Thank
Natalie,
you.
for
Thank you.
being here, for sharing that with us today. Thank you for chatting. And if any viewers have any questions or conversations that you'd like to add, please feel free to reach out. You can contact us at our email address is simply edi@fanshawc.ca. You can join us next month in April when EDI talks sexual assault awareness. On behalf of the EDI team, take care of yourselves and each other.